I think the whole Luka Doncic, Dallas Mavericks disaster that has kind of swept over the NBA, or at least swept over my consciousness of the NBA over the past week and a half or so, has taken away the spotlight on a team in Phoenix that is just an abject disaster. There's no other words to describe it other than that. They're now 26-28 after a loss against the Rockets in a game where they were up by 8 entering the fourth quarter, get outscored by 16 in the fourth, and lose the game by 8. A collapse in a game they absolutely needed to win. And look, I get it. No Brad Beal tonight, no Devin Booker tonight. It's tough, but this is the situation the Suns are in at this point. They have to find a way to win games. This was a game against a good Western Conference team that they could have and probably should have won. Wasted kind of a Kevin Durant masterclass, in all honesty. 15 of 22, 2 of 5 from 3, really good efficiency, 37 points and a team best +5. Royce O'Neal, despite shooting really well, was a team worst -20 tonight. Nick Richards, 11 and 13, just didn't matter enough. Bobo with a pretty inefficient 15 points. Tyus Jones with a pretty inefficient 10 points. Off the bench, they don't get a lot out of really anybody, relying on guys like Colin Gillespie and Ty Washington for contributions, dudes who really aren't NBA rotation players, in all honesty. And I don't mean any disrespect by that to those guys whatsoever. Great college careers, but the honest truth is this is a game you have to win. And look, the Rockets are legitimately good, but the Rockets did not have Fred VanVleet tonight. Still do not have Jabari Smith Jr. either. This is a team that isn't fully healthy in their own right in the Rockets and is, look, very good, yes, but this is a game you should have won. It's a game you could have won. It's a game you were in position to win, and it's a game you failed to win, which kind of feels like the story of the Suns season, a team that has just underperformed across the board. And look, I've been flaming Philadelphia as of late for their failures and kind of ignoring Phoenix's. That's not fair, in all honesty. I feel like I need to talk about this team more, because this is a disaster in ways that kind of rival almost any other fan base in basketball, Dallas notwithstanding, in that the Suns kind of have traded away their future almost entirely and basically mortgaged everything for a roster that is currently the 11 seed in the West and doesn't show signs of getting better. I mean, they make moves for Nick Richard, who was supposed to be a big upgrade at the center position, and in all honesty, kind of has been. And yet it still doesn't matter. They've now lost 7 of their last 10 games. They're 2 games under 500. They're a game and a half out of the play-in. And despite the Mavs being a disaster class front office-wise, the Mavs are still a pretty competitive team. The Kings have won 3 in a row since the De'Aaron Fox trade. That team looks pretty competent with Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and friends. Kind of a better version of the Bulls for the last few years. The Timberwolves, look, they have their flaws, no doubt about it. But they're a playoff team, it looks like. The Mavs, I think I just said, despite all the injuries and all the front office concerns and everything, they still look like they're better than the Suns. The Warriors, I wouldn't have said were better than the Suns until they added Jimmy Butler, who was a real upgrade. And the Spurs, you can't really count them out, despite the fact that they're not great. De'Aaron Fox is a big addition to that team. They could get hot at any time, go on a mini run. They're only 2 games back of the Suns in their own right. The Suns look like they are going to almost certainly be the odd man out at this point in the playoffs. Look, they are 2 games back of the 8 seed. They need to be the 8 seed, I think, going into the play-in to give themselves 2 chances to win a game to make the playoffs. If they can't do that, I don't think from the 9 or 10 seed, this team is going on the road twice and winning 2 road games in a row to make the playoffs. I could be wrong, but I'd be surprised, in all honesty, to see that. And here's the honest truth, y'all. To recap what has happened in Suns land. Basically, they floated the idea of trading Kevin Durant, probably pissing him and his team and people around him off. They discussed a trade that would have sent Jimmy Butler to Phoenix and KD to Golden State, it sounds like, which I think would have been a terrible trade in its own right, but didn't work. They tried for months to trade Bradley Beal, but nobody wanted him because of his contract, and he has a no-trade clause, which makes him almost impossible to deal in his own right. And Devin Booker's kind of having an underwhelming season as a whole, despite the fact he's been playing better basketball as of late. Not to mention there are reports coming out that the Suns locker room has a kind of toxic, I guess, stench to it to a certain extent. Things are not going well in Phoenix, apparently. Whether that's true or not, I don't really know. But the honest truth is Kevin Durant just can't save this team. As good of a player as he is, and he is great, I don't think he can save this team. I don't think Devin Booker can save this team. If they could, it would already have happened. Bradley Beal off the bench has actually been playing halfway decent basketball as of late. It just doesn't feel like it matters very much. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They're 2 games under 500 for the season. And when you look at payroll stuff, they're in payroll hell. I mean, we already know all about the cap problems this team has, but they have the highest payroll in the league by a massive chunk this season. Next season, they're second highest in the league behind only Boston, who again just won the title, has a chance to win another title this season. 26-27, it gets slightly better, but they still have the 9th highest payroll in the league. And I don't think this is very many players coalesced into that either. Like, I just realistically don't think that they are in a good spot at all for the future, in all honesty. Like, I have no real faith in this Suns team whatsoever, because they have a team that is only getting older. They don't have a lot of young talent. They don't have flexibility cap-wise whatsoever. And they don't have assets for the future. When you look at their assets for the future, 2025, least favorable first-round pick between Cleveland and Minnesota. You're looking at a late first there. 2026, least favorable pick between 4 different teams, late first there. Looking at 2027, same thing. Cleveland, Minnesota, Utah, least favorable, late first. 2028, least favorable between 4 teams, probably a late first. 2029, least favorable between 3 teams, late first. 2030, least favorable between 3 more teams, late first. And then 2031, no first round pick or second round pick at all. They are looking at late first round picks for every single year over the next 5, not to mention multiple of those picks can't even be traded because of the Stepien rule. They've basically traded every single asset they possibly have, besides a couple of late first round picks that really aren't all that valuable anyway. And I mean, they traded their unprotected 2031 pick for 3 late first round picks and immediately used one of those picks to get off the Jusuf Nurkic contract, which was a trade that made sense in a vacuum. But with the way this team is already so limited on assets, giving up one of your very few assets to get rid of a guy isn't really where you want to be. But Nurkic wasn't an asset for the team. He wasn't helping them. Getting rid of their contract, that contract doesn't hurt. I get it. But like, at the end of the day, they were in a really, really gross position with a bunch of late firsts and 3 second round picks over the next like 7 drafts. It's pretty disgusting, in all honesty. And there's just not, in my opinion, a real path forward for this team to succeed. And you look at the numbers for the season, look, they're bad for the season. I mean, 25th in the league in defensive rating at 115.6. Offensive rating of a 113.9 isn't bad. It's top 11 in basketball, but they have a net rating overall of a negative 1.7, which puts them as a below average team in all of basketball, 19th worst in, or I guess 12th worst in basketball at 19th overall. But the worst part is in their last 9 games, this does not factor in tonight's game, but tonight's game certainly doesn't help. They are 3-6, now 3-7. And when you look at defensive rating, they have, yes, it's now the 7th worst defensive rating in the league, but it's a 119.6, significantly worse than what their defensive rating is on the season. So despite it being slightly worse in terms of comparing to all the other teams, they're actually worse defensively than they have been all season over the last 10 games, which is not a good sign for a team that's already bad defensively. And then offensive rating wise, look, it's not good. Like, they're 11th in offensive rating for the season. They're 17th in the last 9 games. This team is bad. A negative 5.5 net rating, putting them in the bottom 10 teams in basketball in net rating. They're bad, and they're getting worse. They're not getting better. I don't see the path towards this team being a contender this year or next year or really anywhere in the near future. Matt Ishbia, I'm sorry. Your gamble has blown up in your face. And I don't think there's much redeeming this at this point unless you get off of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And realistically, that'll probably happen this summer if things crash and burn for the rest of the season the way that it looks like they very well might. That's kind of the only option that the Suns are going to have at that point, is getting rid of those guys, salvaging as many assets as possible, and trying to rebuild into the future. And you know what? We will see what happens. With that being said, that is going to do it for today's video. I hope y'all did enjoy. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Be back with more NBA content very, very soon. I appreciate y'all. Peace.